Thank you very much. So I just want to check with the audience and see how many people here think that government policy should be based on reason and science, or should they be based on religion? Let's see a show of hands. For religion, should be based on religion. Okay, good. All right, I think I'm in the right place. Also, what about educational policies? Should they be based on religion, or should they be based on reason and science? Yeah, obviously. What about medical practices? Should they be based on religion or reason and science? Reason and science, yes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that gap, the gap on what it should be and what it currently is. Now, of course, the gap is far worse in different regions around the world than it is in the U.S., but people are surprised to find out that there actually is also a gap in the U.S., and I'm going to try to explain why. So most of you in the room are too young to remember this person, but basically this woman here was in charge of astrology at the White House for Nancy Reagan. And believe it or not, hardly anything happened without her approving and checking the stars. So that is quite remarkable that that was going on during the Reagan administration. So who believes what? Let's talk about the Democrats and the Republicans. So if you look at this chart here, you can see that there are quite a few beliefs that are common among Republicans and quite a few that are common among the Democrats. We're not going to play favorites here. We're going to spread it around, some of the shame and humiliation. So fortune tellers, you can see that Democrats are more likely to believe in them. Ghost, the Democrats there, evil eye. We also have the Democrats more belief there, and also for astrology. And this is from a Pew study in 2009. And so these beliefs carry over and do affect our laws in the United States. Now, of course, I think the general consensus is that the problem is much greater on the Republican Party side than the Democratic side, and perhaps we will graduate to some type of multi-party system here in the U.S. This is Senator Harkins, who recently retired, and he used to take 60 bee pollen pills a day because he believed that's what you needed for better health. And he chaired the Senate Subcommittee, which funds the NIH, and he was able to create kind of an alternative medicine division at NIH that is funded at about $130 million a year. These are just a few of the egregious examples in American politics. Probably quite a few of you in the room remember Michelle Bachmann, and quite the embarrassment there when she was claiming that vaccines cause autism. Now which was surprising because when I worked in the Senate in 2003 and 4, after I left the White House, I worked on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, and we conducted many hearings about the cause of autism, and did it have anything to do with the vaccines and the preservative thimerosal in vaccines? And it was very clear that it did not, and there was, because there was a huge study that came out of the UK that showed that autism was at the same rate in the population that was not vaccinated that was vaccinated. And so when you're looking at evidence like that, you know that it's just not true. Now, political fears. We are looking at some of the, we will try to stereotype here, Democrats, fear of nuclear power, GM food, industrial chemistry, vaccinations. On the Republican side, climate change, unfortunately, evolution, stem cell research, which is something that I deal with every day now, working in the life extension and the health span extension community. Also, sex education. So when you do surveys and you look at the age of Earth in 10,000 years, about 50% of Republicans will say that the Earth is young, only about 10,000 years or less, but only a third of the Democrats. But it's still a really huge, shocking number here in the U.S. Now, some of the problems with this type of policy and these types of beliefs sneaking into our public policy, you can see the percentage of US dollars, the budget, going into R&D research. So it was, in 1968, it was 9% of our budget. In 2015, it was 3% of our budget. So you can see that there's a big movement away from that type of research. You probably recognize here Jeb Bush, and he has himself said a few shocking things mainly about climate change, and he says it's not caused by humans, which was quite surprising. 56% of Republicans deny that humans have anything to do with climate change. Anti-science tactics. So when you hear things like intellectual arrogance, here we want to hear both sides of the issue. Not all scientists agree. My heart and my faith tell me. Then you know, start looking out, have your radar up, that we're moving in the wrong direction. Well, there are a lot of syringes that are being reused. So there's a certain percentage of people getting AIDS in Africa who are children because they're getting their immunizations and the syringes have been reused. So I'm thinking, aha, that is something that my senator can champion. So we had hearings on this topic. $60 million was set aside in the Global AIDS bill for syringes that could not be reused. And then he forgot all about sex and abstinence only and became the champion of this issue. So it did make a small difference. Here we have an infant who has whooping cough. This is a 19th century disease. Shocking that it's happening in the US. There was an outbreak of measles in California where 10 infants died. And you know, the developed world should not have these types of problems, but it's because of the religious exception to immunizations. But we have good news. So California finally outlawed religious and personal belief exceptions for school children for vaccinations. And this can be used as a model to move into other states also. And we've also used it in letters and campaigns in other countries, not just in the US. And of course, we applying it to the Zika virus at this time. So we could go state by state and talk about legislation that is anti-science. There are just some listed here. There are so many. And we can, of course, also go country by country. Now, if we look at the federal government funding for science, we've got a 16% budget cut proposed for the National Science Foundation. 2016 budget only grants 0.7% increase, but it was suggested to be 5.2. We have an innovation deficit that we're seeing in the US. And we have all the wrong people in charge of the committees. Now, it'll probably be shocking for you to find out that Senator Ted Cruz is actually the chairman of the Senate Subcommittee on Space, Science, and Competitiveness. Now, he was given that particular prize because he's from Texas, and Texas has a big space program. But he opposes climate change, and he is not in tune with even what NASA wants, and was one of the ones who spearheaded the 16-day shutdown of the government, which harmed NASA greatly because they were trying to collect data, and it was seriously interrupted. We have Lamar Smith. So on the House side, things are not any better. As a matter of fact, it's probably a little bit worse. We have Lamar Smith, who is chairman of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Actually, no Congressman Smith. And unfortunately, his wife died just a couple of years ago because she refused to take antibiotics because of their faith. And so it's shocking to see, and it's his belief also, it's shocking to see that he's in charge of the whole committee in the House. Republican presidential candidates, now we're down to just Donald Trump. which which is really shocking and disturbing. Just so that you know, I don't know any Republicans that are planning on voting for him. They're all planning on to secretly vote for Hillary Clinton, which is the right thing to do. But there are some bright points. We've got, for example, Congresswoman Barbara Lee in California, who is a big advocate for sex education, for medically correct sex education, and has a piece of legislation that we're rallying behind. We don't need to have 50 different state rules on sex education. It's time to have a federal one that would be best for the country and for the people. States where they have abstinence only and they don't have medically correct sex education taught, like places like Texas, they have the highest teen pregnancy rates and the highest sexually transmitted disease problems of all the states. So the Secular Policy Institute, we are here, we were created to combat this problem. So after being a coalition builder and a lobbyist in Washington and around the world, I've even worked a lot in India and Taiwan and Korea and Turkey and throughout the Middle East, we see that it helps to get public policy change through movements, through coalitions. And one thing that I noticed when I was lobbying in the House and the Senate and doing meetings, they would say to me, tell me about the secular movement. Tell me about the secular movement in the U.S. Tell me about it internationally. And how many groups are involved in the coalition where you are. At that time, I was with Secular Coalition for America, and we had 12. And so they're like, well, when you get hundreds, then come back and see us, and perhaps we will give you a seat at the table. So the Secular Policy Institute, we were formed to try to be extremely inclusive. So we did web scraping, and we found about 6,834 groups in the world. And we have contacted about 500 thus far, and 305 have come in the coalition, of which about 190 are in the U.S., and the others are outside of the U.S. So it's a much better force to have a think tank with 25 luminaries who are fellows that do briefings constantly in the House and the Senate on issues like critical thinking. We have one of our fellows who is a world leader expert on the Taliban. We have one who is an expert on Islamic State. So they're constantly doing private briefings. And we get requests from members of parliament, from senators about briefings. They'll say to us, I don't understand transgender issues. Can you bring in some top scientists, psychologists, medical doctors, and explain this to us? Or they'll say, I really don't understand climate change. Don't let anybody know. Can you bring in top scientists in the field and do closed-door briefings? So that is something that we spend a lot of time doing. So here I am doing one with Richard Dawkins. Here we are with lots of publications that we put together on demographics, on other issues on the secular movement. We have, I have it on the front desk, lists by country, by state, the percentage of the people's belief in God and participation and religion. We also have many advocacy letters, so many on issues in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, you name it, even on U.S. states. So every week we try to come out with a new letter, one on a domestic U.S. issue and one on international. Like this week, our domestic letter, of course, is on Orlando with what happened there, a letter giving our sympathy. And then our international letter is about the country of Colombia that has had really good movement on same-sex marriage. So it's all kinds of human rights issues, but mainly those that are caused by the lack of separation of religion and government. We do an international update call every month, the first Thursday of every month at noon. We send out an agenda. We usually have first-class speakers, like the one that's coming up in July. We already have the co-chair of the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom, talking about their recent report that goes country by country, talking about the lack of religious freedom. They'll be coming on briefing all of us, and that agenda will go out and everyone's invited. We have all kinds of social events, dinners, parties. We have a program called Parent Teacher Community Action Network, and a new one that's going to be launched called STEMCAN, where we are going into public schools and we're working to create programs to save and improve public schools. We meet with lots of ambassadors, Chinese ambassador, Panamanian ambassador, in Muscat, Oman there, constantly giving speeches, Prague. This is Dr. Linda Elder, who is an expert on critical thinking with the Foundation for Critical Thinking. She's been in Washington for 2 rounds of meetings where we have done about 40 briefings on the importance of critical thinking for prisoners and for school children. We serve as back office support for any of our coalition member groups. We'll help you build your website, we'll help you write your policy papers, we'll help you get an address, we'll do your C3 application for you, whatever you need, call. And as you heard we did for Muslimish, we try to help all secular groups. We put together a guide. This one's about 100 pages long. Our fellows write advice for decision makers every year, and this came out in late December, early January. You can see there are a lot of luminaries that are listed there. These are some of our fellows, and we're constantly adding new ones. We have fellows who are Muslims, like for example, this lady right here. She's Kurdish. Her husband was the prime minister in the Kurdish region, and we have fellows from Israel. We have fellows from Iraq. We have fellows that are participating in faith, but they believe in the separation of religion and government. We have brought our brochure here, and we'd like for people to sign up to get our weekly newsletter. If you want more, we have daily clips, and of course we would love for you to be invited to our call, our coordinating call every month. You can come on the phone. If you have any issues you'd like for us to work on as a group, you can simply bring them up and we will get on it. So thank you.